Today on the newscast, how would a Russian invasion of Ukraine embolden China, Iran, and other anti-Western regimes? Find out next. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. The Russia-Ukraine crisis continues to heat up, and the big question now, of course, is will Russia invade? White House officials here in the U.S. are saying that an invasion could happen any day now. Russia has some 130,000 troops massed on its borders with Ukraine, surrounding Ukraine from three sides. And now we have diplomats from various countries, including the United States, evacuating Ukraine, embassies being evacuated, again, as an invasion, according to Western officials, is imminent. Will Russia go through with it? On the surface, it clearly appears that way. But what if Vladimir Putin is playing a different game here and possibly just extorting Ukraine and the West to get concessions and get some of what he wants, even without invading? Of course, the main goal for Putin would be to prevent Ukraine from joining NATO. He's made clear from the beginning that that is a non-starter for him. He does not want Ukraine to attain NATO membership, and he wants all NATO troops pulled out of Eastern Europe. I think of Romania, Bulgaria in particular. What if Putin, just by sheer threats and massing and mobilizing troops and menacing Ukraine, what if he is able to get what he wants without firing a shot? Who knows if that will be the case? Again, sadly, an invasion looks imminent, but the extortion strategy has worked very well for the Iranian regime. Just look at what's unfolding right now in Vienna, folks, as the United States and Western powers are very eager and very ready and willing to agree to a new nuclear deal with the Iranian regime. Now, what has Iran given? What concessions has Iran's leadership made in order to get this deal? What have they brought to the table? Absolutely nothing. As a matter of fact, about a week and a half ago, the Biden administration, as we laid out here in the newscast last week, unilaterally lifted sanctions on Iran's so-called civilian nuclear program and unfroze overseas bank accounts worth some $29 billion belonging to the Iranian regime. And again, Iran gave nothing in return. This was a purely unilateral move by the United States in an effort to entice Iran's ayatollahs to agree to a nuclear deal. And guess what? It may happen. Why do I say it is a case of extortion? Well, throughout these Iran nuclear talks, going back even before the restart in November 2021, but to last spring, throughout these talks, Iran, through its proxies, has been causing mayhem in the Middle East and, yes, targeting U.S. personnel in Iraq and Syria. On one hand, Iranian diplomats are at the negotiating table in Vienna, and on the other hand, Iran is supplying, funding, arming terror groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and those Shia militias in Iraq and Syria that are maiming, killing, murdering across the Middle East. What they're saying, in essence, to the United States and the West is, if you don't give us what we want, we will make your lives miserable. We will cause chaos in the Middle East. We will continue to target American citizens in Syria and Iraq. If you give us what we want, maybe we'll back off. And the West is all too willing to rush into this deal and appease the Iranian regime and give it exactly what it wants. So if Vladimir Putin is watching the Iran model, the Iran example, he is going to continue to push. Iran has continued to push. They have not backed off an inch, even as these nuclear talks are unfolding in Vienna. That is the lesson of Vienna that Vladimir Putin can take, number one. Number two, he and Chinese Premier Xi Jinping and the mullahs in Iran certainly took lessons from the Afghanistan debacle back in August 2021. We've called it here the Afghanistan effect on the newscast, and the disastrous U.S. withdrawal, the show of weakness on the world stage. made America's enemies and the enemies of the West and the free world pretty certain that if push came to shove and, say, Russia wanted to move on Ukraine, China on Taiwan, or Iran and its proxies moving against Israel, there is a very good chance that America's current leadership and the West in general will do very little in response other than offer up some tough economic sanctions and some diplomatic protests. So there you have it. The Afghanistan effect has had a ripple effect, and now we're looking at a possible Ukraine effect. Whether Putin invades or doesn't invade, he will certainly gain some of what he wants. And what does he want? He wants broader Russian influence, a revival of those Soviet glory days. It's pretty simple. He's moving closer to China, by the way. Another key beneficiary of these Russian moves, Xi Jinping, has made very clear he certainly will not protest any Russian move against Ukraine. And he's observing that situation, and he's saying, wow, maybe we accelerate our plans with Taiwan. I've said here on the newscast many times that 2022 is a year of acceleration. Perhaps a Ukraine invasion was not on Putin's immediate wish list. Perhaps a Chinese move against Taiwan as well. Maybe that was going to wait a few years, but now that they see weak leadership in Washington, D.C. and in the West as a whole, they say now is a better time than any. Let's strike while the iron is hot, while we have this window. Let's move sooner rather than later. So we've got the Afghanistan effect, a rapidly unfolding Ukraine effect, and I mentioned at the end of the day as we close here, what does Vladimir Putin want? He wants to project strength on a global scale once again. He wants Russia not only to be a military power, a nuclear powerhouse, but a true superpower on the world stage. Part of that, by the way, as we close, is having that presence in the Middle East. And here's where the prophetic factor comes into play. Russia, obviously, Russian troops have a presence in Syria right now, shoulder to shoulder with Iran and Hezbollah at Israel's doorstep. And tensions are increasing over Israeli airstrikes against Iran and its allies inside Syria. As we reported on Friday's newscast, you can check it out here in our archives, a Russian foreign ministry spokeswoman really slammed Israel, called Israel to stop all airstrikes in Syria, and called it, quote, a crude violation of Syrian sovereignty. So is there a day coming where Russia and Israel will no longer have this agreement that Israel can operate freely within Syria, and Russia will stand back and let it happen? We will continue to keep a very close eye on all of this for you here at the newscast. Hey, before I go, you can become a premium member here at the Watchman YouTube channel. For just $4.99 a month, you can get behind-the-scenes content with me, exclusive first viewings of brand new Watchman TV shows before they hit the air, and much more. You can go to membership or join right here on our homepage on the YouTube channel. We would love you to be premium members at the Watchman YouTube channel. Watch men and women on the wall for such a time as this. Thanks so much for joining us here today on the newscast. Until tomorrow, God bless you, and remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. If you enjoyed this episode and want to see more, make sure you go ahead and hit the like button, click subscribe, and tap the bell icon to turn on notifications for new Watchman Newscast episodes every weekday.